Right.
Right, 7:30. I'm going to say good evening to everybody, and you may have noticed I'm saying it relatively loudly. That is because it was drawn to my attention earlier this evening that it can be quite a struggle for people who are listening to us on broadcast to actually hear councillors who are quietly spoken. And it's very easy to do that because within the room we may be able to hear each other, so we don't necessarily think of people who are listening to us. And I'm probably as guilty of that as anybody, but if those speaking tonight could remember to try and keep the voices up to give the people listening to this broadcast a sporting chance of hearing it. In terms of apologies for absence, we've had apologies from councillors Fuller, Dubois and Ray. Do we accept those apologies? Presumably yes. Declarations of interest. Any disclosable pecuniary interests? Any other interests? Requests for dispensation? Gifts or hospitality over the value of £50? Inappropriate gifts or hospitality offered. Right, minutes. The minutes of the full council meeting that was held on the 17th of October have been circulated. Present myself, Councillor Clark, Councillor Gray, Councillor Wade, Councillor Reichhold, Councillor Hutton, Councillor Arnold and Councillor Shura. Somebody want to propose those, or does anybody seek any revision of them?
Move.
Councillor Wade, I'm not sure whether you're trying to propose it or revise it.
Revising it, if I may. I've lost what I wanted to put. Is that last night's?
17.
There was an item where we reported, oh here we are, 23/1903. An update for the CALC conference. Councillor Wade agreed to investigate how I could help OTC. I thought what had been agreed was what had been said in the note that Max and I put forward, which was I wanted to work with Emma and I think it was Rebecca. On how it might work, not me myself, because it's the town council's staff as well.
So if we add words like in collaboration with the clerk and
The last
Could you add that in as you're holding them, because it will have to be done in,
you said that.
have to be done in pen now,
No, I'm right.
and then just initial it.
Put and officers, because that's short.
That's a good
Yeah, probably
idea.
put and
And officers.
or members of the comms. Yeah.
Which I don't want to do it by myself, because it's not me that's using it.
Trying to get out of it.
The
Share responsibility. Or whichever.
and I just say clerk and staff. Okay.
Mm.
Right, subject to that addition, are we happy? Somebody want to propose it, please? Councillor Reichhold proposed it, Mr Clark seconded. All those in favour?
No.
Bear with me. That brings us on to public participation for interested parties. Have we heard from anybody? No? Consideration of requests from interested parties. It seems to follow by default. It wouldn't be in consideration. At North Northampton Council, from Councillor Harrison. I don't know whether you want to try and talk from there, or we might be better off here, because it is
And they can see you
more
too.
easily seen and perhaps heard.
Well, thank you. Firstly, apologies for not attending the meeting for a little while. I thought I'd better show my face tonight, as I was aware it's a little while since I've last been. There's been a lot going on. I'm so much going on with Northampton Council. I don't have anything specific to report. I thought I'd just come here really to give you the opportunity, if there's anything you particularly want to raise with me. We're right in the middle of budget setting, ready for next year. In my particular area of responsibility, which makes up roughly 40% of the entire council budget, this year we are beginning to look at an overspend. So next year's obviously going to be very critical. The reason for that overspend is that we have had a huge increase in demand. So in our younger adults, so those aged 18 to 64, the demand has increased this year by 15%. And in our older adults, it's increased by a whopping 25%. Those increases are absolutely unprecedented. And on a budget of over £100 million, you can see that those kinds of increases in demand is going to have a very considerable effect. So we're working very hard to understand that demand, where it's come from, why. Is it continuing effects of COVID, because we have people with higher needs, greater frailties? Is it because actually we're taking people on that we actually shouldn't? We're giving care to people who ordinarily we shouldn't be, because the criteria is not met, or are we not sufficiently managing things at our front door, or is it simply that the demand is the demand and that's what it's going to be for the foreseeable future? So obviously we're trying to get under the skin of those numbers, and we're trying to understand what that's going to mean for next year's budget. But just in that context, you'll probably be aware that that means we're looking at quite a difficult scenario when we look ahead. And we're in a better position than the Children's Trust, who, ever since we formed Northampton Council, have been overspending their budgets. And we, as they are a separate entity, we simply have to fund what they ask for. This year it is, again, it's very, very high, so they're overspending more than adult social care. So that's the sort of scenario that we're grappling with at the moment. Obviously, we're working very hard to sort all of those things out and to make sure we manage those people who do need care as efficiently and as well as possible. So I thought that just might be of interest to you. There's so much going on. We've got another extra £1 million for potholes this year, and we're going to have another extra £1 million again next year because of the changes that the Prime Minister made back in October, cancelling HS2 second leg or whatever it's called. So that's what's coming to Northamptonshire. So hopefully that's good news. It should mean that we can get a few more of those potholes filled. I personally don't know how far £1 million go, because it's not my portfolio area, but £1 million extra is to be welcomed, I think. Anything else? Just things that are just jumping into my head as I stand here. We've got the climate conference, the third one tomorrow, so if anybody has a bit of spare time and wants to watch that on YouTube, there's some really interesting speakers going to be talking about different aspects of work around reducing the impact of climate change and reversing that. So those are just things picked out of the air that I thought I might be able to just speak to you about. But really, I come here because I want to hear from you, and if there's anything you need my help with at the moment as a council, town council. So here I am.
Here she is. This is your opportunity to put some questions.
All ready for the onslaught.
Do I have any takers? We don't. I've got one to start.
Okay, of course you have.
Like you, I have no idea how far £1 million goes. But when I look at the state of the roads around Arundel, I don't think it's going to go very far, because some of the roads in this town are appalling. How does the council as it were, putting it to bid for this extra million? Is there some specific way, or is it just going to be done through the usual kind of street doctrine type? reporting?
Okay, so in terms of how's this £1 million going to be focused and spent, I don't know the answer to that because we only found out today that we've got the extra £1 million for this financial year. I think it's this rather than next, but 2 years anyway, 2 years in a row, just over £1 million. Last time when we as a council decided that we were going to put an extra £2 million into potholes, we were very, very clear that it couldn't just disappear into the Kia contract and not be accounted for. Every penny of it had to be accounted for as extra spend over and above what would have been covered by the Kia contract. Kia, as you will know, are our highways contractors. It's what I've always been very worried about, is that £1 million disappears in there, we've got inflation, suddenly the £1 million has gone and nothing has happened. So we were talking about this today at our executive catch-up. We sit around and talk about things that are going on in all the different parts of the council. And that was a very clear message, that we want a programme of work that is over and above anything that we were committed to do this year for that £1 million. So that programme will be developed. I can't tell you exactly what the prioritisation will be, but as you know, in all of the repairs work that gets done, it's absolutely prioritised as according to the urgency of that repair. So I would imagine that it will continue to work along that basis. But I can absolutely get back to you and let you know more once I know more on that.
Well, now putting a request, don't tell anybody else about the meeting, because I reckon you can probably spend most of it right.
I'm absolutely certain we could spend it all right here.
Jessica.
I'd like to make a small observation, and that is that there is somebody employed in highways to go round all the potholes, spraying white lines round, but nothing ever happens. And it looks really silly.
Yes, I'm not sure that they go around spraying lines around every single pothole, but
Well, I haven't
they do go.
done a count.
No. I'm not an expert on the Kia contract and how it all works. I've got enough with adult social care, public health, and the integrated care system, but so I can talk from my own personal experience. So the road that goes past the house where I live, I've never reported any potholes, by the way, simply because I think it's best for me to keep right out of it as a councillor on North Northants Council. But I know exactly what you're talking about, that it was absolutely end-to-end potholes. Some areas almost impassable, there were so many potholes. And lines were put around, some of them, not all of them. And several months later they were filled. But it was a long period between the putting of the white lines and the filling. So I think I can understand your frustration. And I expect that what happens is once a report goes out and inspection's done, I expect they put the white line around when they do the inspection, and then it is tasked that this one needs to be done within the next 6 months, this one must be done in the next 24 hours, and so on. So I think that's probably, I'm slightly guessing, when the white lines go around.
That's correct. I think they're graded.
Yeah.
Because they sometimes use different colours and it depends on the depth.
Oh, yes, well, I know about that.
Just on that basis, I spend a lot of time on Fix My Street or Street Culture, whatever, and we're often told that the community warden has decided this, that and the other. No one ever knows who the community warden is.
Yeah.
Is there any chance that we might be able to meet and just talk to them about the
Yeah,
process?
you raised that with me before, and I did try to find out who the warden was, the community warden. My counterpart, who at that time was the executive member for highways, had never heard of a community warden. It is not one of our council officials, so it must be, if they exist, a Kia employee is my guess. So what I will do is I will take it up again, and I will ask who is the community warden for this area, and can they be met and talked to and so on. So I will raise that again for you, and I apologise.
No, it's fine. You're not the only person that's looking, but they are
Okay.
phantoms.
Yes, I'll try.
Councillor Stewart.
First of all, to confirm what you've just said, you're absolutely right. Because my next door neighbour is a community warden, Peterborough, but they're not employed by Cambridgeshire, they're employed by
The
a
contract.
construction company. So
That
you're
makes sense.
absolutely right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But the more serious point is that fixing potholes is all well and good, but the trouble is the longer you leave them, the worse they get. And I'm sure it's no news to anybody here, but if you just go down South Street, the potholes have got so bad there, there's a real danger that if all you do is fill in some of the deeper potholes, we're kind of back to where we are within a winter's time. And the point is, it's got so bad, you almost now have to consider completely relaying a new road, new tarmac down South Street. And you'll say, oh, well, that costs more money. But you've got to look at the economy of putting sticking plaster constantly over a broken arm.
And I absolutely understand that argument completely, and it's what I probably would imagine would be the right thing to do. Again, as many people have pointed out to me, when they come along and they fill some potholes and not others, it drives people mad, because you think, well, why not fill in those other 3 smaller potholes at the same time? And, you know, I've raised that as an issue myself. And I can completely understand the frustration. And then when you've got a section of road where there are so many potholes, it seems sensible to just replace the whole of that section. Again, I understand, you know, where you're coming from on that. I mean, I think to answer these questions, you probably need somebody who can explain to you technically, well, not technically, really, just in terms of priority, why that is the case. I think simply put, it is that North Northamptonshire is a huge area with a huge, I don't know, hundreds of miles of roads. And if we do a really good job here, we're not going to get over to the serious pothole over there. But at the same time, I absolutely, like, it makes me grit my teeth when I see 4 potholes filled in and 2 remaining, because it just seems mad. So I do understand the frustration with all of those things that you're saying. And I think it's one of those things that it's just the enormity of the problem that we face at the minute, that the roads got to such a state that we're only just keeping up. And we've got winter coming now, which is of course worrying, because we're going to get more rain, more frost, more adverse weather conditions. One thing that we, by the way, this is just a thought that we've been sort of floating, is because we have such a high level of lorry use in our area, simply because we're a distribution hub area, that actually we have way more wear on our roads than other places, and that perhaps funding should take that into consideration. So that's an argument I think we should try to keep making, because we do have such a huge amount of wear on the roads. And those lorries, particularly when they go round and roundabout, and they're doing, I don't quite know how to describe it, but movements that aren't straight. I'm not a technical person, but they definitely have a different impact on road service. So, I don't have the answers that you're going to want, unfortunately.
I wasn't expecting that.
And I share the same frustrations
Take it
that
back,
you
that's
have.
all I'm saying.
Councillor Tarrant.
I was just going to make it a lot of cheery. There are, at the moment, and have been for the last 5 months, 19 North Northampton electric bikes roaming around Amble. They're sadly going home on Friday. I'm going through an emotional departure process with my own. And it's been tremendously successful. And a lot of people are saying, why does the council do it? And all I can come up with is it's a good idea. So thank you to Greg, who's put it in place, and we keep doing it.
Well, I hope that the pilot is seen as a success, and it's something that we can keep promoting and keep doing, because, as you know, active travel is something that we want to promote. We want to get people out of their cars, onto their feet and onto their wheels, their 2 wheels, not their 4 wheels. It's really, I'm pleased if it's a success. That probably means that people have really been using those bikes and taking advantage of that. So it's slightly different to the electric scooters that we see all around London and places like that. but it's the same sort of idea. We want to get people out of their cars. I probably shouldn't say this because the leader won't like me saying it. I don't like those scooters because they're just all over the place, they litter the place, they're on the pavement. But actually, so many people use them to go from home to work. And that means they're not getting in their cars, which is something to be welcomed. So, much as I don't like them all over the pavements, they do seem to be a great success, which is why we keep, we've carried on with that. So hopefully this pilot will be the same.
Fingers crossed.
No worries. If there's anything particular in the future you do want me to come to talk about, please let me know so I can be prepared and, maybe particularly if there's a burning issue that you have.
Right, you all heard that, so if you suddenly think, I need to ask Helen Harrison about that one, make a note of it, feed it through to Emma, and we'll get it through to Helen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Helen.
I'll leave you if that's okay.
Of course. Right, well, we'll press on with the town matters, the first of which is to approve a request from Fratton Field Association to ask North Northamptonshire Council, just left, if they can plant some trees on Fratton Field. Sounds something of a formality, but they're right to ask us, because certainly at this stage, requests of that nature would have to come through this council. And if that's what Fratton Field Association wants to do, I doubt that we are going to need to stand in their way, shall we say. What's that?
I was just going to say that, I think the reason the request has come forward is because it's a missed opportunity. We don't do it this autumn, so if it doesn't happen this autumn, it's going to be another 12 months.
There's also, in the summer, Dave Lane, the senior community officer for grounds services, came around there and he contacted me when I was away. And I showed him around our bits of land. And he was very excited by Snipe Meadow. And when he saw Fratton Field, he said, "Oh, you should put some trees on here." I think they've got an ambition to put some trees. So we were wondering, Fratton Field, Paul was talking to me, and I was wondering if I emailed Dave, because I owe him an email, and just say, what would be the best process for that? Would that be a clever way of getting it done before we move to that?
I think any leverage we can exert is probably welcome. Councillor Jessie.
I'd just like to remind us that, well, it was me, so I have to say it was me. I was keen for us to have a tree especially planted under the planted tree for the late Queen, to be included in that.
Yes, perhaps we could.
We
feed
did,
that.
we did discuss that actually, and that was
Sorry.
we did discuss that, and it would be something we'd considered doing once we got Fratton Field, and potentially
Yes,
maybe all
that's right.
changing the name. That was also discussed. But I mean, I think, do you know how many trees are they thinking,
8 fruit trees is the
and whereabouts are they
I'm
thinking?
not quite sure.
Yeah,
It's broadly along the lines of the original plan, but if North Northampton happened,
yeah.
Dave's view was, we want to plant trees. He was coming here to see if we could plant 1,000 trees in Arundel, which he decided we couldn't. And his view was, we're aiming to plant trees, you want to plant trees, that's a good idea, why would they say no?
Sounds like we're potentially pushing it an open door. But
Is it worth getting our tree guide to just come and have a look and suggest suitable places for whatever trees these trees are going to be?
What, you mean these specific trees in,
Yeah, just
as opposed to trees generally within the town?
I just thought it might be.
I was going to suggest if I contact Dave and say, can we have a chat about trees? And then maybe move to the next stage of exactly what and where, once they've said, yes, go on. That would be,
I perhaps should run it past Edwina and Julie as well, who are dealing with the transfer.
Pronged attack, as it were.
that sounds fine,
We all happy with that?
I'm not sure what we've done.
Well, I think we are supporting, as it were, the request or channeling the request through ourselves to NNC, seeking approval for these specific trees, but we're going to have a slightly broader discussion, John. See if we can actually go further. The next item is to receive the letter from the Baptist Church notifying us at the end of the Ukrainian support group meetings in the hub, and to thank them for providing this service to help Ukrainian families. So it has all been circulated. It is just a question of noting it, unless we want to, as it were, add something to it by making a bit of feedback to that.
Well, thank you for their work that they've done as well.
Absolutely, it's been outstanding.
Yes, I think we should do that. We all happy with that one then? And the next one is to receive correspondence from a resident as a response to the annual surgery article in the Annual Advertiser. I'm kind of looking towards Councillor Ryholt because it's somewhat his baby. Do you want to say anything more about it?
With your permission, Mr. Mayor, yes indeed. It's useful for us to have this feedback. It really reinforces my firm conclusion, and quite frankly, as you yourself, Mr. Mayor, have pointed out at least twice, logic points towards an additional surgery premises in Arundel, which raises the question, where would it be? Coincidentally, I flagged that up in my reasoned objection to the Herne Road to the planning proposal, which was completely consonant with that of our full council, in which I recommended that there be no further planning permissions granted for housing in Arundel, other than the odd infill here and there, until such time as it had been determined that a new surgery premises could be provided and where it would be. So we now await the decision of the NNC Planning Management Committee on the Herne Road application. In parallel, of course, I copied in my objection to the Chief Executive of the Lakeside Healthcare Trust, and also to Yvonne Higgins, a senior officer of the NHS Integrated Commissioning Board. It's perhaps slightly embarrassing them, but I'm rather hoping that it will inspire them to turn up at the planning hearing to be questioned by NNC Planning Management Committee members. Meanwhile, of course, we have these letters that Emma has received, which have been reported to us. So it brings us back to the question, what do we do about them? Logically, I think it would make sense, really, for us to pass them on to the Chief Executive of the Healthcare Trust, whose name I can't remember. Emma, can you correct?
No, I don't know.
Jessica Morton, I think it is. So we could verify that through knowledge. So at least she's generally aware of these. Of course, these are ad hoc, but having received representations, it'd be sensible for us, and I so move, that we do simply pass them on to the surgery, rather than simply re-signpost complainants off to the patient's participation group, which most around residents would see us as trying to, as we dodge the column and send them around the houses.
Seems to me to make sense to forward the correspondence on. I doubt that people
I'll,
who send it would object.
I'll
unless you
probably
really
have to
contact them
ask
first.
the resident if that's okay that I do that, because I think what they were trying to do was just the article that we put in the Arundel Advertiser. It was just to raise although that said that there were X number of doctors, and it was just to sort of raise the awareness that there are still issues happening.
Well, if we can approach the writer and see if they would like us to, we would be happy for us to do it. Right.
So can I just ask one question? Within the second letter, I assume should say resident, there's an acknowledgement of correspondence from Emma, which isn't included in here, so what did you say to the resident?
I can't remember at the moment. I think I just
Is
went,
it-
well, I had a conversation with the person when they came to the hub, and and I just repeated some of the things that other people had come in and said that they had also mentioned in their letters. And basically just to say that it was something that Councillor Lycol was following up and, regularly speaking and making the doctor surgery aware. So it's more about that he was happy that the town council were
So I
trying
think if we were to send these on to if the resident did give their permission, if we forwarded this on as it is written in this report, the first question is, what did you say? So it might just be worth completing this report with, I had a conversation with the resident, and otherwise it's an incomplete picture. If the resident doesn't, for very understandable reasons, want their name put forward in fear that they may not get quite so much treatment or immediate treatment next time, I'm sure this could all be summarised pretty well.
Yes, I mean, the president might agree to it going forward, but anonymised as opposed to going out with their full details in it.
Just quickly, one point. I think that actually the residents are kind of wanting us to attempt to do something about it. So I think the second letter, certainly where it says the last point they make about value for money, I think is a really, really important point. And is the key to the whole thing. Lakeside are treating the NHS to an extent as their own little, well, no, I can't say that legally. I think it's quite funny that maybe talk of another premises when they can't even staff the one they have. It's not good enough. I don't know how we could possibly do this, but in terms of working out their profit versus per patient in the area they cover, that'd be really interesting to find out. I don't know how on earth we do that. But value for money for the service they get, I think, is really, really valuable.
I wasn't expecting to have quite a debate like this on receiving a letter, but nevertheless, Councillor Davis.
Just a view, I think the individuals have written to us as a council, I'm not sure we then need to forward them on, other than we have a position in relation to, we're talking about primary and secondary health care, and it's where it goes to in relation to that, knowing it, so because they are, as you said, right, so they're part of business. So ours is targeted at the primary health side in terms of that. I'll give you an example. I rang the other day for an appointment, and no, they're answering. Okay, fine. What are you going to do for me then? You can go to Kettering. Is it Heathland? Okay, no, that's no good. Okay, ring back at 8 o'clock in the morning. Failing that, go 111 or NHS. Go to the walking centre. Thanks. So these are the points that we need to continue to get our residents to raise. They must offer now, if you didn't know, they can't just say ring at 8 o'clock. They should always offer 111 and Ultra Walking Centre. They can't just say ring back in the morning, not allowed to do it. It's against their own rules and regulations. I think we're all on side here in terms of Oundle is being let down massively within its service that's offered from what used to be there, and perhaps they haven't educated the public enough. Interestingly, the other system you can go on is Doctrine. Doctrine's great if you go on it and it just keeps saying to you, it's not working at the moment. I've tried it now in the last week.
You have to do it
it's just bouncing. Huh?
You have to do it during opening.
And it's a waste of time.
It's
Well, I tried it during open hours and it's not working.
They have actually closed it down.
Yeah, and sometimes you get better support from the local pharmacies.
Yeah.
So I think our target isn't necessarily Lakeside anymore. We're trying, we've done that. We need to target primary healthcare trusts side, higher up the food chain on behalf of the town.
That's interesting idea.
And then the next step is Uncle Tom, tell Tom Perskos again at the same time, because it needs to remain on that agenda.
Absolutely.
That's where I see it, not the letter going across the road.
Right, I'm going to close that down because otherwise we'll spend the entire day talking about the state of healthcare in Amble, which is a subject that vexes us all. On to council matters. And the first
Sorry,
one-
can you just go back? Because at one point I was going to be going to the person and asking if they wanted me to forward the letter, but then we've just heard from Councillor Davis that he's not necessarily think that's a good idea. So I'm just wondering what you want me to do now.
My proposal is we filter it towards the primary health trust side as opposed to the surgery. So we've done that bit with them.
I would second that.
I would agree. Okay. Get a distinct feel of that. So subject to the consent of the parishioner, that's the route we'll take with it. Right, we'll try again. To receive the mayor's report, sent out the mayor's report and then followed it up slightly afterwards by saying, oh dear, I got myself in such a muddle that I thought that last week's FNGP meeting was the full council meeting and thought I must get my report out before the meeting, and then discovered I sent it out a whole week early. Not that actually anything particularly exciting then happened the following week, so not all was, as it were, lost. Just really a couple of points arising out of that. The first bit talked about the larger councils partnership and the presentations that were made to that. The clerk and I were both part of the group that were listening, and I think both of us were struck by what we were hearing and how we might be able to utilise that in Amble. The plan had been to put it on the agenda for a discussion tonight. Unfortunately, due to what can best be described as a technical blip, you'll notice it isn't on the agenda. So we will in fact come back to that one next month. We haven't forgotten about it. Having told Councillor Wade, we had a discussion during the course of the FNGP meeting that I'd have something to say tonight around that aspect of matters which cropped up under talking about our sort of promotional budget, if you like. But you're not going to have that discussion until next month. So far as the Remembrance Day is concerned, I take into account Armistice Day the day before. I've written a fairly full note. I must have an interesting conversation with our RMP, merely to say that I thought it might be the first and last time that I actually technically outranked him politically, because the mayor gets to go up and put the wreath on before the member of parliament does. But he took it in good part, and actually, it was nice to see him there, particularly when he'd already turned out in Corby earlier on in the day. But it was a good event, well attended within the town, and it was a pleasure to be able to present the banner to the Royal British Legion, who I think we should send our thanks to for the work they put in organising the event. It's relatively traditional, but we thank them for their efforts, but I think it's well called for. It's quite an undertaking. To receive the clerk's report, is there anything you want to add to what's there in black and white anyway?
I don't think so.
Any questions as regards Councillor Wade and Councillor Short?
No, I've got eight questions.
Eight questions.
Yeah, so it's interesting, great report, I think. The first question is, There was a meeting on the 25th of October to finalise applications to the land registry. Is there any update from that? Is there anything we should know?
Yes, I've got another meeting arranged for the 29th of November where I should be signing off all of the submissions and then they'll go in.
Great, excellent. That's progress. You also mentioned in here that there's a terms for consideration of the next OTC meeting regarding Fetton Field. Don't see those terms. Is that still?
They hopefully were going to be here for this meeting, but then I got an email to say it'll be the December one, so we won't get it until December.
Okay. So yes, the next one is 17th of October 23. Just to give an update to everybody, the clerk and I went to Lothwell yesterday. We report next month on what actually I think was a very positive, very interesting meeting with lots of ideas as to how we might change things. So that was very positive. Thank you for sorting that out. Same meeting, 239402, the Estates Committee is to consider quotes for the move from Eastwood Road here. I know subsequently to that council meeting, there were reports that the estates thought that it might not be enough to move here. They might need more space or something.
Well, what's happened today is the Estates Committee agreed that a plan was needed. So we've had somebody come, an architect come and actually measure up today and is going to put together the plan of the outside space and internal space. He's also going to come back because he wants to have a look at the car park and see how much needs to be included, or he's going to include a certain amount of car park space and also the little corner bit. So he's going to draw the whole thing. I mean, I know we're not necessarily going to use that bit, but it's worth having it anyway.
Do you think that 20,000 we put aside last month is enough? Or is it too early to tell?
It's too early to tell, yeah, really.
Okay. Down to the next one. 2026. So the next one, oh yes, the emergency plan. You said ongoing, that was due for report back on the 21st of August.
Yes,
3 months ago.
we've not had a meeting, have we? There's been a
And
few
David,
people.
we've shared emails and it's trying to liaise primarily and that.
Yeah.
Council Fulham's the ones that are not being,
Yeah, he's not around at the moment,
not
yeah.
around at the moment, so we will.
And I think Luke was also going to be part of it as well. But,
Just if there is an emergency, it would be shame to say, well, we haven't planned to have a plan.
but we haven't, not worked it out,
We
yeah.
have people
Might as well call ourselves the Boris Johnson government, who didn't have a plan or didn't have a plan. That's it.
In there, isn't it?
Yeah, quite. Don't go on to WhatsApp. Thank you.
Oh, yes. In addition, this is not really a question, I think it's more of an observation. It's your very last row in the table, 20, whatever it is, 31702, to consider residents' request. I'm partly looking at Jamie and I'm partly looking at Ian as well. I think I raised this in the last Estates Committee meeting and said we have decided it and it's not ongoing anymore and we're not continuing investigation. We've drawn a line under it.
I think you are correct. However, I think you are correct, because I think that the discussion sort of moved or evolved, I suppose, to redrawing the lines, or potentially talked about the gun storage unit things. I don't know.
It came up in the last Estates Committee meeting and I know you weren't able to be there. No, I don't think either of you were able to be there. And I think it should be in the minutes of the Estates to the last committee meeting that we've drawn a line under it, that we're not considering these 6 parking spaces. Well, we have considered it, and
Yeah, I think that's
So it's not
fair
practical.
to say, yeah.
so I'm just thinking, maybe have a word with Lisa. I think you'll find that it probably has been decided, and it's not. I think you can take it off.
Yeah, I'm just having a look down through because the minutes are on this.
Isn't this from September?
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with October, haven't we?
October
No,
meeting.
the minutes we've got tonight.
So just maybe check with Lisa, but I think you can probably take it off.
Anything else for the clerk? Right, just a very little one that says, speaking on behalf of the council, I've been thinking, what on earth? Really just a reminder and a plea. All of us move around the town, not only wearing councillor hats, but all sorts of hats, and we're also private individuals. And I think it's pretty important that if we are drawn into discussions about something, that we make it clear if we are speaking, if we are writing, that we do so in a personal capacity rather than as a councillor, unless of course you actually are acting on behalf of the council because the council has asked you to do something in particular. And it's simply to avoid a situation arising where a view is expressed, a misconception arises that it's something to do with a council policy or something that in fact may not have even been debated within the council. And so just think twice before you actually say or write council logs in connection with something like that. Try and do it as intelligent as possible. Yeah. Councillor Wade and Councillor Chess.
So I presume you're raising it because there has been an instance. And if there has been an instance, and I'm not asking for any detail, but have you had a conversation with the individual concerned, or is this just that allowing you to tell everybody, in addition to the conversation you had with the individual concerned?
An issue arose, it's been dealt with.
Okay.
And I don't really propose to say any more about what triggered it. Councillor Chess.
I get asked frequently, are you still on the council? Yes. And people then ask me to bring things to the council.
That of course is fine, I mean that's part of our role.
Yeah.
It's where, I don't know, in relation to what Councillor Harrison was talking to us about earlier, about that budget. If somebody went out and started saying, you know, I, Councillor Ross, with our town council, are saying we should be lobbying or we are lobbying for X, Y, and Z. And that's their sort of pet project, not necessarily something to do with the council. It may simply be misleading. It's more difficult to explain without, in a sense, an example. But I think probably people can see what I'm getting at. And if anybody's got any doubts, I would always say, ask the clerk before you actually particularly put something into print, or indeed if you happen to be on social media, or indeed in radio, TV, or anything else for that matter.
It might be worth reissuing the Commons Working Group terms of reference, within which it states these are council responsibilities in terms of representing themselves or representing the council.
Good point.
That might be worth doing, because that has already been circulated. If it needs further input from the mayor, then click it with repetition.
Well, we can do that quite easily. Right, move on. Next one, possibly the simplest one of the evening, simply to receive the employment law updated in the pack. So I move swiftly on to consider taking part in the D-Day 80 commemoration and update. You may recall that we mentioned this at the last full council meeting, and it was a general feeling that perhaps the council could and should do something. Somebody came up with the idea of the beacon that sits between Oundle and Blackthorn, which is technically into Blackthorn Parish. I've spoken with Blackthorn Parish Council. Blackthorn Parish Council has spoken to the Reddings and whose farmland it is, and in principle they're happy with it. I think that the slight fear of Blackthorn was A, we don't kind of want to be either sort of steamrolled or ignored. B, what if hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people pile out of Oundle to go and see this? You can get a road closure, but nevertheless, if you had a large group of people, it might be quite difficult to manage. I think the last time that it was lit in Blackthorn, I would estimate it was about 100, if that, villages who were around in the street because it was actually closed off. But they were also very keen to say, well, what has Oundle done in terms of liaising with the Royal British Legion, with the Oundle School, in connection with the cadets and so on, because they saw it as being something where those organisations should logically be involved, but then in what way and so on. Now, I believe that Emma's had a conversation with the Royal British Legion.
Yes, Morag has spoken to them, and I think they want to do something, but it's more along the lines of laying a wreath at the War Memorial, not an event.
And it's also fair to say, and I think I'm right in putting it this way, that very recently, I think Danny Moody put out all sorts of stuff through NCALC about doing things for this particular occasion. And it's quite clear that in various places, they're going to make quite a thing of it. So it's still a long way off, but I see your hand. We may want to have conversations with other people and a conversation with Blackthorn as to whether we take it forward in that kind of way, or whether indeed we simply join with the Royal British Legion and maybe mark an event around the War Memorial, much as we did over the weekend, just gone. Councillor Davies.
Why don't we have a wreath laying or something at the memorial, and we open up the Queen Victoria Hall on the 6th of June 2024, and we have a tea party for the residents, all the residents, get everyone down there and promote it, and we put a band on the stage, old-fashioned music, 1940s band type music, and we promote, and that's our relaunch of promotion of Queen Victoria Hall moving forward.
Very good. It's quite an
We've got
ambitious
time,
event.
we've got time to do it. We own the hall, we know all we've got hats, we've got teacups, we've got everything else. And we have a vintage event. We might consider closing the road and getting all the cars down there for the event, but let's have a bit of razzmatazz on the 6th of June.
We just need Mrs. Brown to the music.
Absolutely. Let's do it for the town, and then we don't have to worry about, our platform can come, but we don't have to worry about lighting the beacon. We'll let you know, because we've had events like that.
It is a Thursday that day,
The
so
6th.
I'm not
Oh, we
sure
do it.
about closing the
Well,
road on a
probably.
Thursday.
No,
Market
it's
is-
Thursday.
Yeah.
We do it, but again, we make it an event.
It's an interesting thought. There are 15 hands going up, and I have no idea who's first, so I'm going to work my way around. So Councillor
I think that's a good idea. I just, the one question I would have, and you sort of answered it, is that sort of thing expected to happen? Like when you know, when it was the Jubilee last year or whenever it was, you kind of expect there was going to be a, you know, street parties and etc. Is that expected to happen? Things of that nature?
I'm not sure I'd use the word expected, but I think people are anticipating a degree of creativity.
Okay.
And of course, we are talking about an event from the 1940s, and so a 1940s themed event might fit quite well with it.
So from the website, yeah, they're expecting, and again, look at our relationship with the USAF in this town.
Morag has been speaking to
Yeah.
some people that she knows.
Members of the armed forces will lead the commemorations in June 2024, so it's June. Meeting Gates events will bring the UK and its allies together to remember our shared history as we recommit to working together to protect. Members of the public will be included in the campaign of events, tributes and broadcasts to ensure the whole country can pay their respect to the fallen of D-Day.
Okay.
So I think we've got a green light there, that, and that's us from the website, in relation to the government website.
Is Councillor Shearer?
Yeah, I think it's a very good idea. I fully support it. I just augment it slightly and say that in addition to the kind of team, whatever you were thinking of in QBH, if you're going to have a kind of Glenn Miller type band or something like that, you might want to do that later and have it in Cletton Field since it's the summer. And I'm sure if we spoke to Creative Arnold, they might be able to help with finding such a band. I've got some on my list.
Interesting.
I checked with the cadet force today, they've not heard anything, but from the school's point of view, it's the middle of the A-level GCSE season. So it'll be hard to get band and cadets and all that sort of stuff, because it's smack bang in the middle of a big exam day. And we were talking about this in the history department today, and it's the whole book, etc. came up. I've got a good book on that, but I haven't looked at it yet. But I'll look at it tomorrow.
Okay, well, I think this is probably, for the time being, going to be a bit of a standing item on our agendas.
Yeah.
I think all the people who've expressed ideas, if you can sort of explore those, develop them, let's all talk amongst ourselves and see if we can start to put together something. And there is an opportunity to do something quite special and memorable. And I do like the idea of somehow using it to highlight the QBH.
I am away on holiday that week.
Great.
But fill your boots.
Yeah, right, well,
Is more on holiday?
No, I'll make sure she is.
She's watching this. Because we can hold it, yeah. We could hold it on Saturday.
Right now.
Yeah, we could do it on the 8th, couldn't we? That's basically the campaign, we just do it on Saturday.
Why don't we do what Councillor Chappie suggested, and the three of us sit down and say,
Mhm.
Do it.
I'll take it.
yes, we can have a little subcommittee to investigate it.
Does that mean formal approval? Or does it not?
I don't think it needs formal approval. I'm sure everybody's quite happy for those of us who are interested in this to talk more and try and see if we can move it on. Right, financial matters. To approve the bank reconciliation balance sheet and budget for October 2023. That's what it is, simply to approve them. Unless anybody's got any questions, Councillor Wade.
I do. I think it comes under this. I learned a lot about Section 106 monies recently, and it would be worth, because I think they're held in our reserves, it would be worth knowing a little bit more about what monies are due to be spent and by when they are due to be spent, because I've learned that if they're not spent by a certain time, they don't have to be spent what they were originally agreed on, subject to certain criteria. They have to be paid back with interest. And I think although they're not included in these papers, they're included as a subset of the QBH papers. There are some which are already overdue. I hope that's not true. And if it is, we need to act. So my question is, can we have an update on the section on the 6 month situation or the next council or the next finance meeting, if that's more appropriate, so that we can manage them?
Well, there'll be a finance meeting before the next full council, so we can ask the finance officer to put together something showing what funds we've got, why did they originate, what were they originally hypothecated for, and whether there are any time implications.
If you could make that a minute, an agenda item next time, that would be great.
Yeah, I've already, there's only one outstanding amount. The rest of the money has been spent that we've been allocated, but there is a query on the money that NNC are currently holding for us.
On behalf of it, because it was ENC, wasn't it? Now it's NNC. Where is that?
Yeah, it transferred over, but I've just got to get something clarified. But it's it's not. It's
Maybe we won't talk about it at this precise moment.
yeah. Mm.
I think it's important that we deal with it.
Absolutely. So, yes, we'll put it together, it'll come before FNGP, and there'll be some sort of a report one way or another, either within the FNGP minutes or a report back to the next council meeting. Right, so, subject to that observation, do we approve the various documents? Just take that as a general yes, and the basis already saying no. Proposition that the schedule of payments for October 2023 are retrospectively approved. Are you happy to do that? I'll propose it. Councillor Wade, is that you seconding it? Yes. Words in favour? Yeah. And to receive the verification checklist for Q2, simply it's there. And the next one is to receive the minutes from the FNGP meeting held on the 14th of November. It's a dangerous thing to do because I'm doing it now, actually looking at the minutes, but there was one obvious main thing, which is that FNGP were again going through the budget, pretty much a line-by-line scrutiny. It's very much a work in progress. Things that were talked about and identified at that meeting, some of these things are being investigated in terms of costings and what have you. And all being well, there will be another FNGP before we come back for the December meeting. And if all is well, there'll be a recommendation from FNGP as to the amount of precept to be sought, because I think I'm right in saying that the January full council meeting would come after the date in which we would have to request it. So we cannot, for any reason, sort it out in December. I'm afraid to say that means an extra emergency meeting in January to sort it out, and I'd rather not have that if we can possibly avoid it. And I think the other item which we talked about was a grant funding application. But it's all in the minute. The next item, for those of you who've been paying attention earlier this evening, is a request for a balancing grant from the QBH Trust, which I am reliably informed. They are requesting in the sum of £22,276. Now that is their kind of worst case scenario budget. It may be that they will not call down for all of that money because they will only ask for what they need within a budget which will be bolstered by that sum on top of receipts. But that's the request. I'm going to propose that we make provision for that grant. Do I have a second for that? Councillor Rycroft? All those in favour? That's everybody. Right. Receive an update on damage to the Gapthorne room floor and consider next steps. What can you tell us?
I've put a short report and I think it has been reported at Estates.
I saw it on the walk from we were waiting to hear.
Yeah, I've gone back to our insurance company just to say it's very difficult to just replace 2 metres by 7 metres across the middle of a floor because we're never going to match the original. So I'll wait to see what they say. If not, then they're offering 15 or 1600, but then they're going to have 500 back. So technically we have £1,100. The only thing with the floor in the Blackthorn room is I think although there is this damage, there is an issue underneath with the floor underneath. There's some, I don't know what's happened, but it sinks, and as you walk across the floor, you almost feel like you're going to fall, and then you're up high. So I don't know. At the same time that we look at the floor, we're going to have to look at what's underneath anyway and pay for that ourselves because that wasn't caused by the damage. So I don't know. It's over to really Estates or this committee to decide whether they want to try and push to get funding to replace the whole floor, and then we also pay for whatever needs to be done underneath, or whether Estates look at it a bit more closely.
Looks like a lot of money. Councillor Arnold.
No.
Oh, sorry. You were only drawing my attention to Councillor Davis.
Can we make the insurance claim and then utilise the money to help pay for new flooring being made? You're making an insurance claim anyway, but the floor's damaged. If it's unrepairable, it's got to all replaced. So you're still making a claim on insurance, but you're replacing. You're funding the rest of these.
Yeah, I mean, if they come back and say no, sorry, we are only going to give you the money to replace that small amount, then we'll have about £1,000 to go
towards the
sorting out the floor. But I think it's that, I don't know when the new part was added on the end, that seems fine. It's the existing from the door up to where the new part starts, where
might not be enough.
I don't know what they put underneath, but
Should we have it properly examined from the safety point of view? Because it might be a claim on the people who did the flooring in the first place. I don't mean the surface, I mean the underneath, because I once saw somebody go through a floor. It's a long way down to the floor below.
I think it's been probably too long since that.
Well, we should still try. We can't just make an assumption.
I don't know who did it.
Well, it'll be a record somewhere.
Well, I have looked actually.
It may be difficult to see a plan at this stage. I would have thought. Councillor Clark and Councillor Wade.
It's a while since I saw it, but the burners didn't seem critical in terms of the look of the floor. And again, maybe only small buildings, but the dip didn't seem that great. But it strikes me that if the state could have a look at it next week before our meeting at 6, have the next problem, and make a recommendation, then at least we know what we're doing. So if we come in at 10 to 6 and have a look, that'd be my opinion.
Makes sense.
So do you want me to just wait?
Refer to the states, and
Yeah.
the states are actually making a recommendation next week.
It's what about the State Committee report, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So,
It had been my intention to go to that estates meeting for various reasons. But unfortunately, I now discovered that I'm going to be in Norwich at 3 o'clock. There is no way I will get back in time, so I shan't make it.
be a good speed indicator device next.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think I would certainly be figuring on a few speed indicator devices if I managed to do what I've got to do there and get back by 6 o'clock. Pretty impressive. Yeah, to receive the report from the speed indicator device. Don't know whether any comments on that. It is what it is.
Is what it is. Are we going to move it again soon?
Yes, we will just play one of the batteries. We need to replace one of the batteries, so we've just got that. So it will move now.
To
One of the other
Both ways, we've done Benefield Road.
is it Station Road? Yeah, on Station Road.
Near the bus stop.
Yeah, so that'll be the next location.
We had to get sites approved by the police or highway.
Sorry?
So we had to designate certain.
Yeah, we've got designated areas that have all got licences and we can move, so we can move them into those designated areas.
I think it just assists us now, in relation to the amount of vehicle traffic that's coming into the town before we've got major developments that are still pending. It's good data to have moving forward when we may or may not have to go and talk to planning committees.
Just on that basis, one of the transport report findings was to get a second device.
Yes.
Do we need to work out the cost before we put it on the agenda? Or do we just put it on the agenda in order to find out the cost? It's the correct way.
I don't think it matters. The only thing being, we can't really obviously make any sensible decisions without knowing the cost. So if somebody wants to go and find out the cost first, let's come back with a sort of costed plan. And just on that subject of the significance of our transport study in the context of planning, did a copy of our transport study get sent to
Yes,
Yeah, I thought you had.
I've not had any response from any of the people that I've sent it to, but it's been sent.
No, well, it's not hugely surprised me, but at least we can make reference to it. They then say we haven't had it, we can point out that they did. Right, to discuss ideas for public transport in Amble. We almost did a double take on those words, as proposed by North Northants Council. There was a little paper about it. I noticed that the little paper is headed confidential, but presumably we can discuss what's in here. So you'll see that our clerk was contacted by the Principal Public Transport Officer for North Northants. So it almost comes as a shock to discover there even is one, but there we are. Council are currently conducting a network review of local services, looking at the possibilities of providing local bus and community transport services in the most appropriate manner. Then a reference, strangely enough, to section 106 funding from recent developments which could be used to provide some additional services. But my recollection is pretty certain that that certainly was part of the Cotterstock Road development, where the developer was, when they were saying, you know, give us planning permission, one of their selling points was that they would be contributing to transport. So they talk about services which would include Rushton Lakes to Amble and Stamford to Amble. And DRT services, so I don't actually say what DRT stands for, but DRT services in the area in the north and south of Amble. And then a later bus for the X4 route. Key questions are what routing and journey opportunity in Amble could these services provide that would be used? Are there any groups in Amble that meet daily or weekly that we could timetable any services to provide access to? Could we work with any groups in Amble to promote services and the proposed electrification of the service X4? And is there any group we could work with to promote the idea of the chatty bus for a weekly outing from the town? I mean, that's all quite interesting stuff. clearly we ought to be disseminating that amongst relevant groups in the town to say that this is actually under consideration and we need some feedback. But what else could and should we be doing at this point? Does anybody think? That's all right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has just come before us. I entirely agree that we should disseminate, so that the people we disseminate to, who we think would find it very helpful to know, and who also would be willing to give us their views. But I strongly suggest we make it very clear to them, this has just come to us, this is a very big picture indeed. We don't know for certain how much Section 106 funding will be available. Moreover, when disseminating, we should give a clear message that we've not yet taken any decisions because it would be impossible for us to take any decisions in the absence of knowing how much money will be available. So in other words, shut it out, make it clear, we want views, you have commitment, but please give us your views.
Thanks, Lloyd.
I guess my first question is around timetable.
Oh, yeah.
We're in the third week of November, and we're being told Christmas is still a thing, I think. So we're being effectively given 5 weeks from a standing start to, quote, go to tender. Go to tender on what? Who's driving it? And how is it possible to go to tender within a 5-week period when we haven't even defined parameters, goals, budget, or consultation or income? So my first question is, why is it a end of 2023, and can that possibly be moved? Because I can't see how we can A, disseminate, as has been suggested, B, receive back and collate input, and C, put that forward to the council if they're going to go to tender, I don't know what, in 5 weeks.
Seems to be a pretty fair point. Councillor Davis.
I suspect there's a budget in there, they've got money available to use. That's my guess, that's my guess. I like the DRC, by the way, because they're talking about having a service of some description going north and south, and I can picture a little electric bus driving from one end, starting at the top end near Glatthorne, and driving some of our less mobile people to the market on Thursday, so that they're not getting in their cars and clogging up the town, and that service is offering them that, or we use it for the Waitrose run or whatever else to keep people out of their cars, because it's like a demand-led dial and ride. You know, remember the dial and ride thing thing? That's what the DRT I think stands for. So that you
Was it called Connect?
yeah, something like that, yeah. So you ring up, but we've got an ideal opportunity to say, actually, yeah, we want an electric vehicle of description. And then it's doing the runs from the right at the benefit of the road. If they build Stoke Door, or if they build on Stoke Door Road, fine, it all comes in and there's a proper route put in. They'll do it, I'm assuming that's what they're ideal. We've got to put the idea forward. But that is a really good opportunity to help out more mature people in town. And keep them out of their cars, but give them that extra that they might need. Bear in mind we are an ageing population, and we're talking about having other care facilities where we're on about putting mobility scooters on some of our footpaths, which aren't equipped for them. Just to be.
Well, that's a very fair point, because of course we've got planning permission for the extra care facility on the new St Christopher's Drive development as and when. I'll say as and when it's built, as opposed to as and when if. But that's 65 units. McCarthy Stone have a planning application going through the system at the moment, which, if granted, is another 42, I think it is from memory. So
Yeah,
that's 107 units.
So even getting people to the sports centre for swimming, and all those, I think these are great opportunities for us. Sorry.
Councillor
Well, I think you're first, I'm just going to respond to Councillor Wilson.
This is something that the transport group were talking about a year ago, and we tried to put it in the transport report to some extent as well. And the guy from Rushden Way, who now his vehicle seems to be back on the road, and he looks to be able to do a trial day on January the 11th around town. He has contacts with Danny Inco, I think. So whether he's been talking to them about the demand responsive travel, because he's also talking to other parishes, and one of the parishes quite deeply involved on that January 11th trial, got Barmore, I'm not sure. There we go. But also he was talking about the connectivity from Thrapston to Raunds and Rushden Lakes. And as soon as you get down that part of the county, you get 3 new express bus networks open to you. So if you want to get somewhere else, Kettering Hospital or whatever, you've got to get to Thrapston or Rushden. So even a bus service to Thrapston opens up the other half of the North Contacts network that we don't have. So I think we can say very clearly at the moment that all of the feedback in the transport report linked strongly to the support for the DRT service and links to Thrapston, and anything we can do immediately to support Danny's campaign and look for ideas is something that we'd very happily do.
Councillor Wade.
Accepting that, I've got down here leverage your work, because it seems you've done a deal of work on this. Just from what you said, and what Councillor Davis has said, nothing liking with the aim or the purport of those suggestions, but number one, we don't know what the budget is. I know they've got money, but how much money they've got. Number two, to define what we want within 5 weeks, based on input from 2 councillors, albeit that one council has done a great deal of work on transport report, isn't actually going out and getting much input from other people. So I still maintain we should be looking to understand exactly what's required of us. Is it just to give a number of ideas? Is it to leverage the report that Councillor Clark has produced? Is it to go out and get other people to give input? What do they want? Because they're asking for it within 5 weeks. And if they want something more than just, it's a good idea, we should do this, we should do that, we should do something else. They want more than that, which I suspect they might if they're going to tender, because a tender document specifically asks for quotes for specific services. We're on a hiding to nothing if we try to do that in 5 weeks.
Councillor Shore.
Yeah, I think it's a vexed question. I think the key thing is the fact that there is a timetable attached. They're talking about putting a tender at the end of the year, if I remember reading the document correctly, which with Christmas and everything else is a very short period of time. Realistically, although I do think we should try and put maybe something up on the town council website asking for suggestions, so it looks as though we are trying to carry out a consultation. There isn't enough time for a proper consultation. I think we just simply have to accept that. But I think equally, we have to box clever. And what I mean by that is that I think it's probably worthwhile, probably the town clerk, going back to Danny, whatever his name was, and trying to get a better understanding of what we put our weight behind, by which I mean, what is the most likely thing that's going to get money?
Yeah.
And they're all good ideas, and I support all of them, but they're not all going to win. And I think we've got to, and that's what I mean by box clever, I think we've got to perhaps understand a little bit more about what Danny is trying to achieve, and put weight behind what we think is the most likely winning outcome.
Councillor Clark, Councillor Hutton.
Just 2 or 3 things. I suspect, and you might know more than this than we do, but I suspect that they've already started to put some of this in a timetable. as it were. So it's a matter of, as you say, where's the money best spent? It's clear as well that the Copstock Meadows development's got 150,000, section 106 applied to local bus services. So Christmas Drive has the same amount, so there's a large budget floating in from somewhere potentially. There's also in the last few weeks quite a few traffic counters gone up around in and the outskirts of town that I would imagine might be related to some of this because of this green transport agenda that NMC are pushing. So I suspect some of these are going to happen at some point relatively soon. I would also suggest if we go back to Danny, I did a paper a couple of months ago on community transport, and what we could suggest if you give him a copy of that and the transport report as well, and say we've actually already talked to lots of people about local bus services. I've had meetings in here with people about the VA, so we've done all the groundwork. We know that the co-op's bus to and from the Stamford area died a death because there wasn't enough custom. And so actually, number two's a nice idea, but may not work that well. And number 1 and 3 are things that came out of our transport report. And that might be enough to start pushing in the right direction.
Yeah.
And then we can work with them as and when they want to. How's that happen?
I was just going to mention, as Ian has just had, Volunteer Action. Volunteer Action provide a form of DRT services effectively. They are having to increase their costs to their clients because they're struggling to make ends meet, and obviously costs of running cars is increasing, and the volunteers have got to be reimbursed for their expenses. So there's already an up and running service there that is sorely in need of extra support. So that's an easy way of spending some money.
And just on that basis, there already is within North Northampton a community transport bus scheme in that place I can't remember. They're over towards Lawns, and there's the one in Appleton that we went and had a look at as well. And so there are local models that they might want to base on that on, based on the Appleton model is that volunteer action helps people get from A to B and into A and B. But the DRT service gets you to A and B, and you get out and do it yourself. So there are different markets, and it might be that volunteer action can help them deliver.
Which sounds like a plan. If the grant goes back to
Danny.
Danny,
Dan.
that's who you have to call Danny to get somewhere. Goes back to Danny, gets better parameters as to what's required of us. Perhaps push back on the timetable, and then use Councillor Clark's transport report, when the other inputs we give to say, what else do you need? I come back to my point, 5 weeks isn't enough to grab this and come back with a plan.
Yeah, I mean, whilst you're right, the 5 weeks isn't enough, I think it's almost a vaguely done deal, it sounds to me. Somebody is going to try and make this thing happen, but they're not giving us the time to do the job we would want to do. But the reality is that actually we can do quite a lot anyway, because as Councillor Clark points out, whereas our own transport survey, as the paper he did, is the fact that we've already done this work. Unfortunately, we have to have volunteer action in the town. These are all things we can highlight straight away, and we make the point that grant funding to volunteer action could help deliver certain things and preserve a service that already exists. We could highlight the fact, because it may just get overlooked, that there's £300,000 worth of Section 106 money floating around here, which was designed to try and bring people in from the new developments. We can refer to the need potentially to service the extra care facility on St Christopher's Drive, but also, if it gets permission, the development of Hurdle Road. So there's a lot we can say straight away, whilst at the same time bemoaning the fact that it's not given us much time. We don't really understand fully the parameters. We want to try and ensure that we don't end up missing out. So, is there, as Councillor Shura puts it, something that we can particularly aim at that gives us the best chance of success? Meanwhile, we can at least try and disseminate this information fairly widely. But the reality is, you're disseminating it to groups, particularly groups that then have to meet and discuss it and then feed it back to us. By the time we've got got it back to us, we'll be struggling to get it to them. I mean, if we get it to them, presumably if they're seriously talking about going to tender at the end of 2023, they're just not going to get that. What they're actually looking for either is some validation of what they've already got in mind, or somebody with effectively fairly well worked up schemes. They may have just been hoisted by their own petard, because we have actually got some fairly well worked up stuff that we can drop in their lap and we can do it more or less straight away. So is everybody happy that we adopt that approach?
Yes. So proposed.
Fine. I don't think we need a full proposition. I think we've basically agreed on the approach. Moving swiftly on, planning matters, to receive the minutes of the planning committee meeting that was held. I touched on that. The main application that we considered was the extra care facility on Herne Road, and for a whole raft of reasons, I didn't think an awful lot of it. Not because one isn't arguably needed. The facility they're talking about sounds an asset, but it's probably the wrong building in the wrong place. And then there is the overall issue around infrastructure, which is that nobody seems to have actually figured out. If you've got a surgery you can't have at the moment, we've introduced, as it were, 42 living spaces for people who they themselves estimate will have an average age of 78. Unless they're the fittest 78-year-olds in the country, it's going to add quite a bit of demand to GP services. Anyway, we'll see what becomes of that one. I think about the only positive thing I can say about it is it was certainly an improvement on what they'd originally planned for Gutton Road, which we didn't like, ENC didn't like, I think it was ENC then, and the inspector didn't like it, and it went to appeal either. But this one, we shall have to see. Unless anybody's got any questions on planning, we can move on to the estates management matters, and that's if we can proceed minutes. But before I do,
Well, yes, in case people haven't spotted it, the minutes that we've been sent are actually for the September meeting, not the October.
Yes, I noticed that, but I have at this moment in time uploaded the October ones, but I don't know whether you are receiving them. I'll put them straight in the
well, that
file.
of course is because I did it from memory rather than looking at what I've actually got printed out.
But having said that, on the October ones, as we were talking about earlier, the item car parks and parking, it says update, see report, and then it just says received.
Right.
So it doesn't say anything particularly, unless.
We'll deal with it in the next meeting. I chaired that in during his absence, so I can give a quick verbal report. It will be quick, and that is, we discussed many things, but the headliner was the whole issue of relocating the workshop effectively here, and we've already had a report on that from the town clerk this evening about the steps we have to go through before we have to get quotes. So it's an ongoing situation. I'm quite sure we'll be discussed again at the next estates meeting, but work is proceeding.
Fine. If anybody has any questions?
Just one, if I may, we talked at the last finance meeting about the rolling maintenance plan to last budget well. So I was pleased to see that the reports to receive a 3 to 5 year maintenance action plan work in progress update in September. When will that final plan be ready, and will it be ready in time for budget meeting this year? And will it help us in the following years? In other words, will it be updated in the following years so that when we start the budget planning process in September next year, October next year,
It's a work in progress. It's live on the estates team, and all the information I brought you with last week about the work that needed doing was drawn from it.
Okay.
So at the moment, every time we discuss something, I'm updating it, so we do have a rolling view of And I spent a very interesting half an hour talking to the church warden in Basildon yesterday about quinquennial every 5-year inspections. And I made a note to add something about that. I haven't got around to it yet. So yeah, it's live.
Great. Will it be ready for the finance team so before they look at the budget?
Well, what I reported back last week was the view of it,
Okay.
but it will be hopefully more an improved version next week. That's the ambition.
Communications Working Party to receive the latest edition of the Annual Advertiser, so it's come out when it's ready and there's a copy of it. It's slightly daunting, seems happening all over the front of it. But thank you to all those who put it together. Unless there's anything else from Commons, we'll move on to any other relevant matters for the report, because there's one more item we're going to take in a minute. So, Councillor Arnold? No. Councillor Wade? Councillor Shearer? Councillor Hutton?
We briefly mentioned at the beginning the difficulty of hearing people on the live casts. There is technology that can help with that. Members briefly got to see a demonstration of a meeting owl, which is a kind of a kit that sits in the middle of the room, and it magically makes you all appear as in a row, and when you start speaking it zooms in on you and picks up your voice much better because it's got clever microphone technology. I may be able to borrow it again and to have another play with it before the next meeting. They're about £1,000, so there's no investment. Yeah, I mean, it might be worth thinking about. I mean, I know it's a cost, but
We used it in a meeting, we've got 4 or 5 of us. It was very good, though somebody kept shrinking.
Doesn't do airbrushing and things like that.
But then,
it's got a CCTV camera on top that can basically zoom in on whoever it is.
and a 360 month, so it would
Like
affect.
an hour.
It's showing
Yeah.
13 years younger.
And it goes twit too. Switch it on.
Can I put in a little request in that case that we suggest to our finance officer that when he brings out version whatever it is of the budget, we put in a figure of say £1,000 for this.
You
Because it
need a table and put it there.
does,
Well, I'll try one.
and it does really sound as if it would improve our kind of visibility, I use that in
It would,
broad sense,
definitely.
to the public.
Yeah.
And it's just probably a good investment.
Just on that basis, if we can try that this year, we've got a lot of money in the Fletton House budget for this year, so we might be able to.
I'll be using it on Tuesday for another meeting if I can manage to pinch
Can we
it.
go on what?
As it means, as we do, I could possibly, at the very least, I could possibly get a recording, which you can see how effective it is listened.
Great. Sounds really useful. Councillor Rycroft?
Nothing to add?
Councillor Clark?
Just a reminder, we had quite a few trees given from the Jubilee Green Canopy a while ago.
Yeah.
A lot of them have survived the summer, and I'm in contact with the primary school about finding a date in January where we could hopefully plant them up there. So sometime beyond January the 8th, I haven't come up with a date yet, but I'll keep everyone informed.
Where are they going to be planted?
Somewhere in Anwell Primary School.
Oh, yeah.
In and
Oh, yeah.
around their forest school, which at the moment doesn't have any trees. Which is a slight problem.
Are we going to see a councillor with spade?
I suspect so, but it depends on the date.
Mayor's job, huh?
Right, I'll move swiftly past that. Councillor Chester?
No, I don't think we'll do it.
Councillor Davis?
One thing, as we were talking about trees, we have a Christmas tree in town.
Yeah.
Can we write to Father and Hay Trees? I think you've provided it. And
We have done,
we have done print.
and it's already gone out on our
Brilliant.
social media.
Well, I mentioned it. Thank you.
Nothing from me. Is there anything from you?
Nothing from me, no.
What I'm going to now invoke is Standing Order 3C. I'm going to propose that in view of the special and or confidential nature of the business about to be transacted, it is advisable in the public interest that the public be temporarily excluded and they are instructed to withdraw. So I will propose that, and so please second it. Councillor Clark, those in favour, please. seemed to be everybody. Turn off the